Heartland fans, the wait is finally over. After years of anticipation, countless theories, and endless hope, Ty Borden is making his triumphant return in the premiere episode of Heartland Season 19. This revelation has sent waves of excitement and emotion through the show's dedicated fanbase. Ever since Ty's emotional departure, fans have clung to the possibility of his return to Amy, Lindy, and the rest of the Heartland family. Now, in what is shaping up to be one of the most poignant and unforgettable episodes in the series' history, that dream becomes a reality. How does Ty come back? How do Amy, Lindy, Jack, Lou, Georgie, and Tim respond? And what does this mean for the future of Heartland? Join us as we unpack every heartfelt moment, every emotional exchange, and every tearful reunion. This is the episode fans have been eagerly awaiting. But before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe to Next Flying, and turn on notifications to stay updated on all things Heartland Season 19. Now, let's jump right in. The day starts like any other at Heartland Ranch. The sun rises, bathing the sprawling fields in a warm, golden light, while a gentle breeze stirs the leaves. Amy steps out onto the porch, a steaming cup of coffee in hand, and takes a deep breath, savoring the familiar mix of fresh air and the earthy scent of horses. The ranch is quiet, save for the distant sounds of horses neighing and birds chirping. Nearby, Lindy, Amy's young daughter, laughs as she chases a playful foal, her little boots kicking up dust as she runs. Jack is busy in his usual spot by the barn, repairing an old saddle, while Lou steps outside, already engrossed in her paperwork. Tim stands near the stables, his sharp eyes scanning the ranch to ensure everything is in order. It's a peaceful, ordinary morning at Heartland, but that tranquility is about to be disrupted. A faint rumble breaks the calm. At first, no one pays it much mind, but as the sound grows louder, Jack pauses, his brow furrowing in confusion. Lou stops in her tracks, tightening her grip on the paper she's holding. Tim turns toward the road, his gaze narrowing as he spots an old pickup truck approaching in the distance. The truck looks strangely familiar, its tires kicking up dust as it draws closer. The faint hum of the engine grows into a roar as the truck slows to a stop in front of the ranch house. A heavy silence falls over the family. No one speaks or moves. The truck door creaks open, and out steps someone they never expected to see again, Ty Borden. For a moment, time seems to stand still. Amy's breath catches in her throat, and she clutches the porch railing for support, her heart pounding so loudly she can hear it in her ears. Jack's steady hands falter, his knuckles whitening as he grips the saddle. Lou's face goes pale, the paper slipping from her hands and scattering to the ground. Tim's expression hardens, his emotions unreadable, but his sharp eyes remain fixed on Ty. Georgie, who arrives just in time, freezes in place, her eyes wide with shock. No one can believe what they're seeing, except for little Lindy, who tugs on Amy's sleeve, her innocent eyes filled with curiosity. "Mommy, who is that?" she asks softly. Amy's lips tremble as she struggles to process the moment. "It can't be," she whispers, barely audible. But it is. Ty steps forward, his appearance weathered by time and hardship, yet his eyes are the same deep, warm, and filled with a mix of longing and uncertainty. His gaze locks onto Amy's, and for a moment, it's as if the rest of the world fades away. Then, finally, he speaks. "Amy," he says, his voice soft and hesitant, as though he's afraid she might vanish if he speaks too loudly. The sound sends a shiver down Amy's spine. It's real. He's real. Lindy glances between her mother and the stranger, sensing something familiar but not quite understanding. She tugs on Amy's sleeve again, her small voice tinged with confusion. "Mommy, who is he?" Amy fights back tears, struggling to find the words. She kneels down to Lindy's level, gently holding her tiny hands. Her heart races so fast she can barely breathe. In a shaky voice, she whispers, "Lindy, this is your dad." A profound silence falls over the ranch, heavier than before. The weight of those words hangs in the air, an unspoken truth finally brought to light. Lindy's bright blue eyes widen as she looks at Ty, her young mind trying to make sense of it all. Daddy? She repeats softly, her voice a mix of uncertainty and hope. Ty, overcome with emotion, kneels down to her level. His hands tremble as he reaches out, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Yes, sweetheart, he whispers. It's me. Without hesitation, Lindy takes a step forward, then another, and before anyone can react, she runs into Ty's arms. He closes his eyes, holding her tightly, as if afraid this moment might slip away. Amy watches through tear-filled eyes, her hand covering her mouth as emotions overwhelm her. For Ty, no one has been more of a father figure than Jack Bartlett. From the moment Ty arrived at Heartland as a troubled teen, Jack took him under his wing, shaping him into the man he is today. Their bond, built on trust, respect, and unspoken love, runs deep. So when Jack sees Ty standing before him, alive and well, it's a moment that shakes him to his core. The reunion takes place in the barn, where Jack has spent countless hours working and finding solace. He's saddling his horse, adjusting the straps with steady hands, but there's a heaviness in his eyes. Amy had told him Ty was back, but Jack needed to see it for himself. Then, he hears footsteps he never thought he'd hear again. Slowly he turns, and there stands Ty, his expression a mix of guilt, hope, and hesitation. Hey, Jack, Ty says, his voice rough with emotion. Jack doesn't respond right away. His piercing blue eyes lock onto Ty, studying him intently. His face remains stoic, as always, but beneath the surface, emotions swirl. He takes a slow breath and finally speaks. Well, I'll be damned. The words are quiet, yet they carry the weight of years of unspoken feelings. The weight of years filled with grief, anger, and relief hangs heavily in the air, pressing down on everyone in the barn. Jack Bartlett, the steadfast patriarch of Heartland, pulls off his worn leather gloves and tosses them onto a nearby hay bale. The sound of the gloves hitting the hay is the only noise breaking the silence. He steps closer to Ty, his boots crunching softly against the dirt floor, his piercing blue eyes locked onto the younger man. You've got some nerve showing up here, son, Jack says, his voice steady but firm, each word carrying the weight of years of unanswered questions and unspoken pain. Ty nods, his expression a mix of guilt and determination. He had expected this reaction, perhaps even braced himself for worse. I know, he replies softly, his voice barely above a whisper, yet filled with sincerity. The barn falls silent again, the tension so thick it feels like it could be cut with a knife. For a moment, it seems like Jack might turn and walk away, leaving Ty standing there alone. But then, without warning, Jack closes the distance between them and pulls Ty into a tight, wordless embrace. It's a hug that's been years in the making, firm and unyielding, as if Jack fears Ty might vanish if he lets go. His strong arms wrap around Ty, and for a brief moment, the walls Jack has built around his emotions begin to crack. His throat tightens, but he holds back his tears, refusing to let them fall. Instead, he pats Ty's back roughly, the gesture both affectionate and admonishing. Don't you ever do that again, he mutters, his voice gruff but laced with an undercurrent of relief. Ty exhales shakily, fighting back his own emotions as he nods against Jack's shoulder. I won't, he promises, his voice trembling but resolute. Jack steps back, gives a single nod, and then, as if nothing happened, returns to saddling his horse. But the faint, almost invisible smile on his face says it all. Jack Bartlett never stopped believing in Ty, and now, at last, his grandson-in-law is back where he belongs. While Jack's reaction is quiet and understated, Lou Fleming's is anything but. Loud, emotional, and explosive, that's just who Lou is. She's always been the protective older sister figure in Ty's life, the one who watched him grow from a troubled teenager into the man he became. She stood by him during his relationship with Amy, celebrated their love, and saw how deeply he cared for her. So when he disappeared when he was gone for years without a word, it shattered something inside her. And now, out of nowhere, he's back. Lou first hears the news from Amy, and her initial reaction isn't joy. It's raw, unfiltered anger. Amy barely gets the words Ty's back out before Lou drops everything she's holding and storms toward the barn, her heels clicking sharply against the wooden floor. She marches in, her eyes blazing and her heart racing, a storm of emotions swirling inside her. Ty barely has time to turn around before she slaps him hard on the shoulder, the sound echoing through the barn. "You unbelievable idiot!" she shouts, her voice trembling with a mix of fury and relief. Ty doesn't flinch, just rubs his arm with a sheepish look. "Yeah, I deserve that," he admits, his voice quiet but sincere. But Lou isn't finished. "Do you have any idea?" Her voice cracks, betraying the depth of her emotions. "What you put Amy through? What you put all of us through." Ty looks down, his face filled with shame, his hands clenched at his sides. "I do, Lou. And I'm sorry," he says, his voice heavy with regret. Lou lets out a bitter laugh, crossing her arms tightly over her chest, as if to shield herself from the flood of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "Sorry, that's it? You vanished, Ty. Amy mourned you. Lindy grew up without a father. And now what? You just waltz back in and expect everything to go back to normal?" Ty meets her gaze, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and determination. "No, I don't. I don't expect anything. I just want to make things right," he says, his voice steady but pleading. Lou's expression softens slightly, but the fire in her eyes remains. Beneath the anger, there's love, deep, protective, sisterly love. After a long pause, she exhales sharply and shakes her head. "You'd better. Because if you hurt Amy or Lindy again, I'll make sure you regret it," she says, her voice firm but tinged with vulnerability. Ty gives a small, grateful smile. "I wouldn't expect anything less," he replies. With that, Lou pulls him into a quick, fierce hug, full of unspoken words and years of pent-up emotions. When she pulls away, she wipes a tear before it falls and mutters, "Welcome home, Ty." If Lou's reaction was explosive, Tim Fleming's is downright volcanic. Ty knows this conversation will be the hardest. Tim has always been tough on him, even after he became part of the family. Tim doesn't forgive easily, and he doesn't let people off the hook when they hurt his daughter. So, when Ty steps into the house and finds Tim sitting at the kitchen table, arms crossed and jaw clenched, he braces himself. Tim doesn't move. He just stares, his sharp eyes boring into Ty as if trying to read his soul. "Hey, Tim," Ty says cautiously, his voice careful and measured. Tim scoffs, leaning back in his chair. "That's all you've got." "Hey, Tim," he says, his tone dripping with sarcasm. He leans forward, his eyes narrowing. "You've been gone for years, Ty. Years, and now you just decide to show up?" Ty swallows hard, his throat dry. "I didn't decide to be gone, Tim. I didn't have a choice," he says, his voice tinged with frustration and regret. Tim slams his hand on the table, the sound echoing through the room. "Neither did Amy. Neither did Lindy," he says, his voice thick with emotion as he shakes his head. "You left them, Ty. And now you expect us to just forgive you?" Ty takes a deep breath, his hands clenched at his sides. "No, but I'm asking you to let me prove myself," he says, his voice steady but pleading. Tim's eyes are cold, his expression unreadable. "You've got a long way to go, kid," he says, his voice low and measured. A heavy silence stretches between them, the weight of years of pain and unanswered questions hanging in the air. Finally, Tim stands, his chair scraping against the floor. He walks past Ty, his footsteps heavy, and just as he reaches the door, he mutters, "Don't screw this up." It's not a hug. It's not forgiveness. But for Tim Fleming, it's a start. Inside the house, the family gathers in the living room, the atmosphere thick with tension and unspoken emotions. Amy sits close to Lindy, her fingers gripping her daughter's hand tightly, as if afraid Ty might disappear again. Jack, Lou, Tim, and Georgie sit across from Ty, their eyes filled with unspoken questions and lingering doubts. Ty takes a deep breath before speaking, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I know what you're all thinking. You thought I was gone. And for a long time, I thought so too," he says, his eyes scanning the room, meeting each of their gazes. Amy swallows hard, her heart breaking all over again as she listens. Then what happened? She whispers, her voice trembling. Ty looks down at his hands, guilt etched on his face. After I got shot, I didn't die. I was taken to a small clinic near the border. I was unconscious for months. When I woke up, he pauses, his voice trembling. I didn't remember who I was. A collective gasp fills the room, the shock palpable. Lou's eyes widen, her hand flying to her mouth. Amnesia? She asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Ty nods, his expression pained. I didn't remember anything, Heartland, Amy, Lindy. I spent years trying to figure out who I was. Then, one day, I saw a newspaper article about Heartland. It triggered something in me. Everything came back, and all I wanted was to come home, he says, his voice breaking with emotion. Amy wipes away tears, shaking her head. Why didn't you come back sooner? She asks, her voice barely audible. Ty's eyes meet hers, filled with sorrow and regret. Because I was scared. I was afraid too much time had passed, that you'd moved on, he admits, his voice heavy with guilt. Jack exhales deeply, his shoulders sagging with the weight of the moment. You're a damn fool, son. But you're home now, he says, his voice gruff but filled with quiet relief. That night, Amy and Ty sit on the porch, the stars twinkling above them like tiny beacons of hope. The air is cool, the silence between them comfortable yet charged with unspoken emotions. Amy finally asks the question that's been weighing on her heart, her voice soft but filled with vulnerability. Are you really back? Ty takes her hand, squeezing it gently, his touch warm and reassuring. His voice is steady, filled with emotion as he looks into her eyes. For good. Forever, he says, his words a promise. A tear rolls down Amy's cheek, but for the first time in years, it's not from sadness, it's from hope. Ty Borden's return has changed everything. His presence has reopened old wounds, healed broken hearts, and brought back a sense of hope that had been lost for years. But what comes next? Can Amy and Ty rebuild what was broken? Can Lindy adjust to having a father she never knew? And how will the rest of the family react as time goes on? One thing is certain, Heartland will never be the same. If you're excited to see what happens next, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to NEXTDOOR. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about Ty's return? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.